Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Megan Murphy. This is our weekly Where Are All the Women stream. We wanted to help people find all the women because seemingly they could not. So here we are. Look no further. And I am here, as always, with Mary Lou Singleton, who is host of the How I Healed podcast, which I think is like pretty relevant to today's topic. I sent some people the link to that podcast just this week in response to some of their comments. And I thought, oh, you might find this interesting. So I don't know if they looked it up or not. I hope so. And I've linked to all of this in the show notes down below if you're watching on YouTube. But in case anyone is looking for Mary Lou, she's on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton and on Twitter at ML_Singleton. And How I Healed is on, I believe, all the podcast apps and on Substack as well. And you can find more about her work at Enchanted Family Medicine. We are also here with Isabella Malbin, who has a pretty cool new hat on. Tell us about your new hat, Isabella.
Well, just sometimes you wake up and you decide you need to print 120 hats that say make faces move again, and you just roll with it. It's a new year. And I'm just tired of getting advertised prophylactic Botox and regular Botox. But yeah, for the youngins, it's the marketing is getting really, really sneaky. And I noticed getting a little critical of my own face and the softness happening even in my early 30s. And so I just felt called to make this hat so we don't all end up looking like the same person.
You don't want to inject botulinum toxin into your face. The toxin from the botulism bacteria that's literally the most deadly bacteria on the face of the earth. You don't want to put that in your face?
Not today. Things may change 5-10 years from now. I might succumb to the propaganda, but I think based on my resistance to the COVID propaganda, I have a good track record and I shall resist.
Okay.
I feel like I'm sort of on the don't trust any of it page. I've never personally gotten Botox, but I know a lot of people who have, and I sort of have in some ways trusted the propaganda that it is safe. But most of all, I think, first of all, I don't need Botox. And second of all, I find with these kinds of things that people seem to go overboard. And I am wondering if, like, once you start on these kinds of cosmetic procedures, you develop some kind of like face dysphoria. Like you'll see it a lot with lip filler, and like you're sort of like, you don't need to first, your lips are probably okay to begin with, but like now you look really weird, and I sort of wonder what it is that they're seeing when they're looking in the mirror. Like, need more. But needless to say, I think some of this is falling out of fashion, to be honest, because I think that a lot of women, I'm not picking on aging women because I know that there's a lot of pressure on women to stay looking youthful. Like I've talked about this before. Like I've done PRP in my face, which is something that is also used to treat injuries. So they take your blood and separate the plasma and put it, in my case, into my face to stimulate collagen. And I don't really feel too worried about that because it's my own stuff. But I've noticed that there's so many actresses and like celebrities who've gone so overboard and look so bad. And when you compare them to the women who are aging like naturally, I think that we're learning some important lessons around going overboard with all the filler and Botox and cosmetic surgeries. And yeah, people have started to look like they all have the same face, which is really weird.
Yeah, yeah, and they do the same tricks as they do for like everything, like the mini pill. It's a low dose of hormones. Like it's just a little bit. It's like the lowest. You know, we don't want to
Mm.
give you the regular dose. We're just going to give you a little bit. It's like the same. You know, as women are hesitant to get this foreign substance in their face, you have the dermatologist. You know, just assuring them that it's just a little bit. It's not like the big thing.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always something new, and you just always have to wonder what the new thing will look like in 10 or 20 years. I mean, that's sort of it's like, where's, we don't have enough long-term research on this kind of stuff. I'm not against it. I do various things, but anyway, I support your message.
Thank you. In solidarity.
I have tried filler like here before, and I just didn't like it, so then I never did it again. It was sort of like, it seemed sort of, first of all, unnecessary. I was like, okay. And then because I did such a small amount because I didn't want to like change my face. And then I just felt like it sort of like pushed like, I don't know. It just doesn't accomplish what you want it to accomplish, which is for your face to look the way that it did 10 years ago. And you just can't do that. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, I don't know. Your mic still sounds a little bit quiet to me, Isabella. I don't know if it's bothering anybody in the comments. Maybe I'm just like harping on this. If there's nothing you can do about it, it doesn't matter too much. It just sounds quieter than Mary Lou to me. But
if it persists, I can continue to lean closer into the mic, but I also have an alternative if it's
okay, well, let it, I mean, whatever. Yeah. If anybody is having trouble hearing, just let us know. And otherwise we won't worry about it. Megan Wisdom says, Pam Anderson gave up makeup and I'm here for it. She looks amazing, which is true. I really like that. I mean, I don't really like to get into celebrity stuff all that much, but I was impressed that she's doing all these like red carpet things without makeup.
Yeah.
And I think she looks great.
She's an interesting person. She had all her babies at home in California when it was illegal to do so. She really pushed past a lot of medical propaganda and had home births with midwives back before that was standard and then or allowed in the state. And then she was an advocate for breastfeeding with implants because at the time Hollywood, there was like almost a 100% breast implant rate among the women of her circle. And she was really this big PR advocate of you can breastfeed with implants. Then she had her implants removed and was really public about that. And now she's doing this no makeup thing. And if you go from like the early Baywatch images of her to where she is now, her trajectory has been really interesting.
Yeah, totally. I didn't actually realize she'd had her breast implants removed.
My understanding was she had them removed, but maybe she had them downsized or something.
I mean, you're probably right. I haven't looked at her breasts recently, so
don't check.
But I mean, I think I've heard of a lot of women lately, like, or women that I sort of vaguely know, or women that I follow online who are taking their breast implants out. One of whom is a Muay Thai fighter, and I guess she got them when she was young, and obviously it seems very impractical for something and dangerous for a sport like that, and for a lot of sports, honestly. I frankly think that breast implants, I just think it's such a weird thing to do to your body. Like, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with your breasts ever, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I suppose I understand it to a certain extent for women who have had mastectomies on account of breast cancer, but just for somebody who has perfectly normal breasts and wants them to be bigger, it's like, who cares? Like, men don't care about that. I'm sorry, but they don't. Like, men, I think, just like all breasts. I don't think about my breasts that much, and of course men like to look at breasts, but if they're attracted to you and they want to be with you, they're not going to not like you because your boobs aren't big enough or like full of silicone in this case. I'm sure that they feel really weird and different, and I think that they sit weird. They just look like freakish. Like, when you see them in like, who am I thinking of that I saw recently? Like Nicki Minaj or something like that. And it's just like, this doesn't look good or sexy. It looks weird and disgusting. But anyway, sorry.
I interviewed a woman, a psychologist, who had an explant. journey, and her name is Dr. Amanda Savage Brown, and she talked about the breast cancer to implant pipeline, which is probably the most tragic one, because you're taking out a known cancerous or precancerous or prophylactic cancerous part of the body, and then putting in a verifiably like toxic substance to replace it, and just the cognitive dissonance around that, and yeah, she talked about just the psychological significance of what the breasts symbolize for women, which is why it's so few women do not get breast plants after they've had a double mastectomy for health related reasons. It's really, really rare to refuse it, and doctors don't even give you the option. It's like they're like, oh, of course, here's the surgeon, here's the script. Yeah, I know women who have had breast implants, and I think it's it's like any other body dysmorphia. It's like you try to become the version of yourself you have in your head, and you'll never become it.
Right.
It's impossible.
For me, the saddest part is a significant number of women who get implants lose all nipple sensitivity. And then 100% of women who've had breast cancer, had a full mastectomy, have no sensitivity at all. And that just feels so horrifically like Stepford-esque to me, that this is entirely about how you're perceived. It has nothing to do with your own pleasure. It has nothing to do with your own sensations. And then about 10 years ago, there was this huge controversy in medicine that for decades, surgeons had been telling women that breast implants after mastectomy feel the same. They've been telling them they will feel the same. They will feel the same. But what they meant was to someone else feeling your breasts, and the doctors they were insisting they hadn't been lying. They had been misunderstood, misinterpreted by telling women they will feel just the same.
I hate this.
It's so sad.
And it's so hard for like the descriptions I've heard from women. It's like it's hard for them to like lift their hands up straight above their head. Like basic mobility is impaired after the implants. I mean, it's not even like, of course, there are the more serious concerns like the ability to breastfeed, and sensation, and like the lack of erotic pleasure, and on all of that. But like to not even be able to lift comfortably, like use your arms and twist your arm behind your back, like just it's
weird.
Yeah, that's wild.
It seems like like, and when you're like, for example, like when you're like a MMA fighter or something like that, like I've heard of women's implants rupturing, right? Because you're being like slammed on the floor and punched and etc. And it's just like, I mean, that just sounds horrific in and of itself. And I suppose those women feel, because I mean, nowadays, unfortunately, when you're an athlete, I think a lot of your success and sponsorships and whatever will be connected to your social media following. So if you're a UFC fighter and you're female, you are probably relying on male followers who may or may not think you're hot. But yeah, it just, and I would think that it would make it harder to find clothes to fit. I have always had trouble finding clothes that fit like my shoulders and my hips, and then that I can button up or zip up over my breasts that fit like, so if it fit here and here, it's too small here, and if it fits here, it's too big here and here. And I'm not like particularly thin or anything, but according to whoever makes clothes, my butt and my hips aren't big enough to match my breasts. So I would think that would exacerbate that problem. But somebody in the comments just said, my boyfriend said feeling breasts with implants aren't warm, and it's haunted me ever since. Like, yeah, I would think that it would feel weird. The sexual sensation thing, or the just sensation thing in general, but of course it's a part of sexual pleasure. I think any woman with nipples that have sensation knows that that's a pleasurable experience, and to get rid of that so that you can be sexier is just
it's horrible. And it fits with so much of, you take the birth control pills so men can ejaculate in you and you won't get pregnant, and now you have no libido. And you're depressed because of your bad relationship, so take this Prozac so you'll stay in the relationship, and now you have no libido. Take these breast implants so you'll be sexy, and now you have no nipple sensation. It's so tragic. It's all so tragic.
Yeah, it is tragic.
Yeah.
I feel so bad that women, feel this way, that they feel like they have to do all these things to their body so that men want to have sex with them, when men will have sex with almost anybody.
They're lucky.
That's not the only
Yeah.
reason I feel bad about this, but I'm just like, you really don't understand how men work, huh? Like
Right.
men like women's bodies, men like women's smells, like
I think abusive men are into what's it called, nagging women, and that
right.
they do
Yeah,
say terrible
that's
things
true.
about them. And I
About the
do know
bodies, yeah.
multiple women who have had implants, then explants, who did it because an abusive partner told them that they needed to do it because they were so disgusting, and and also he needed her to make him proud, and how could he go out if she didn't look like a model. And I guess the message to women is, if a man wants you to get implants, get away from him. He's not a good man. You can find a man who,
and he's a porn addict.
And
yeah,
ask yourself
totally.
if you want to sign up for like a minimum, if you're lucky, of 2 major surgeries.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just the implants. It's again, if you're lucky, you'll only have to replace them like 1 to 2 times in your lifetime.
Right.
If you're lucky, if you don't have gazillion like other complications, autoimmune issues, all of the
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
I
sad.
heard that it can cause autoimmune issues
Mhm.
on top of all of that.
Especially the old silicone ones, but the so-called saline implants they're plastic. It's a bag of plastic
Gross.
in your chest wall. It is gross.
Mhm.
Yeah. Go. I'm sorry.
I was gonna move towards the topic that we're meant to be
Yes.
discussing, but before we did that, I also wanted to ask Isabella where people can purchase 120 of your hats.
Oh,
Is that what you said?
Stock is dwindling. I did a soft launch on Instagram, and the blue one I have. So, whose body is it / whose body is it.com/shop. And the blue one I have, this is like the trucker hat style, and then I have a washed denim and a cream and green. The denim seems to be the most popular.
Well, now you've said trucker, and you've made a hat with the word "make" on it, and I'm just thinking this is your way of campaigning for Trump, Isabella.
You know what? You caught me.
Have you become a right-wing Trump supporter?
You caught me. No. My heart is still with RFK, if he can make it, if he can survive and also be elected. That would be wonderful. But I would take Trump over Biden any day.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, what a terrible situation.
But I am an RFK fan also.
Yeah, we love RFK.
Yeah, and his wife, I love her too. I love the whole package.
Yes.
So yeah, and that the links to all of Isabella's stuff are down in the show notes on YouTube also. So the link to her website, whosebodyisit.com, and Isabella is also on Twitter at whosebodyisit. And my merch, my Don't Drink the Kool-Aid t-shirt, is at thesamedrugs.creator-spring.com. So don't drink the Kool-Aid. And yeah, so today's topic was triggered for me, I guess, by the Gypsy Rose Blanchard story, because she's been freed from prison. And then sort of coincidentally actually by these 2 tweets that I made turned out to be very controversial. And it's not like I thought they were like nice tweets. But to be fair, I'm not going to pretend that I thought that no one was going to be angry about those tweets. But people were like way angrier than I thought they would be, which I guess happens on the internet when people take things personally. And I think in general, people online are looking for reasons to get mad about things, so are going to inject thoughts and ideas and meanings into things that I and others say, so that they have something to like pontificate or hate me about. So a lot of people hate me right now, and most of them are women, and most of them are radical feminists, which explains in part why I've distanced myself from that community. Because I feel like, the trans activists have treated me very badly, of course, and threatened to kill me and things of the like. But next to them, the people who've treated me worst on the internet are the radical feminists. For love of women. But a lot of women have, I should explain what the tweets were, I suppose, in case people didn't see them. But a lot of women have wished disease and disability and death on me. And
that's nice. That's
also
kind.
determined that pro-woman, and I've definitely determined that I'm not a feminist, and specifically said that my feminist card should be taken away. I've already given my feminist card away, so anybody who wants it can have it. It's been up for grabs for, I don't know, a year or two now. But yeah, and I think, the first thing I said, I still don't really think I said anything that bad. But I said, why is it that I have never in my life met a man claiming to have chronic fatigue, long COVID, or fibromyalgia, which is true. I never have met a man in my life claiming to have any of those things, only women. And then I added that my working theory is that being a victim of something they can't help / have no control over is something women are more comfortable with than men. It isn't typically a masculine quality to enjoy being pitied or identifying as a victim, though this has changed for the trans delusional class. But, traditionally, men are not a fan of being perceived as being victims, or of having people feel sorry for them, I suppose. And although that's not necessarily true of some abusive narcissists, now that I think about it, I wish that women would stop reinforcing these stereotypes and take empowerment into their hands a little more. You can do a lot more for your health than any of these diagnoses can, in my opinion. Which I still don't think that it's really that bad, but I guess people feel sensitive about something that they are struggling with, and maybe they felt relieved by these diagnoses and assume that I'm implying that I think they're faking it, which I'm sure some people are. People fake illness all the time, which is something that we're going to talk about today. But the implication is not necessarily that these women all of these women, I should say, who are identifying with these diagnoses are faking it or lying. It's just that I don't think long COVID is a thing. And I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but things like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia tend to be things that women are diagnosed with, or who they self-diagnose on account of a lot of other issues, including trauma and mental health stuff. And I do think it's not, I don't live the perfect lifestyle. I'm not the epitome of health, but I do know that it's true that things like sunlight and getting enough sleep and the choices you make in terms of what you put inside your body, and not having a stressful lifestyle and going outside into nature, these things all do help a lot with all sorts of things. I don't think that should be a controversial thing to say, but people got really angry at me in saying those things, and eating meat, and that sort of stuff that's from my own experience too. When I was in my late 20s, I would say I didn't have any energy at all, and I was tired all the time, and I was eating a ton of sugar and a ton of carbs, and I was mostly eating vegetarian. I wasn't a strict vegetarian, but I hardly ever ate any meat. And when I switched over in my 30s, I suppose, and now I eat meat every single day, I eat eggs every day, meat every day. I try to eat fruit. I try to make sure that I'm getting all of my like supplements. I try to get some sunlight, blah, blah, blah. I don't do as well on the sunlight thing as I could and should because I work inside, but considering where I live, I should be doing better. But like I feel good. Like I feel in, every day, like I don't feel tired unless I have a reason to feel tired, i.e. I did not get enough sleep. But like eating meat, I think has helped me a lot in terms of my health and in terms of having energy and stuff like that. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to analyze this really. Maybe you guys can.
So as you were sharing, Megan, I got like a intense spasm in my side.
You didn't eat your steak today, eh?
Perfect. Yeah, I didn't eat enough steak. So I'm just adjusting my body. But yeah, I love the German new medicine, approaches, Megan is sharing in the comments, the whatever symptom the body is expressing is real, right? Like if you have a stomach ache, like you have a stomach ache, like there's a sensation in the body, there's a cramp or a pulling or a tightening or, whatever is going on. And the idea is that it's adapting to something, that there was some kind of conflict previously, maybe the day before, maybe the week before, maybe it's recurring. And so seeing symptoms and sensations in the body of varying degrees is not a call for disease or pity or like a kind of clamping in, but rather an opportunity to nourish, to rest, to heal, to see it as already healing versus sickening process. So I definitely, when someone says they're really tired or they have a stomach ache or a headache, I certainly, in most cases, unless we're talking about Munchausen, I would believe that it's happening. They're feeling those sensations in the body. But how we as a society decide how to respond to that, I think needs to be in question. And that's what GNM does. And so in that process, you're giving up the identity of sickness. You're giving up, all your family members calling, oh my God, how are you? I heard you were sick with a cold. Do you need anything? I'm here for you. I'm so sorry. There's something going around. My neighbor and the whole family, they also have it. It's like you have to release all of that extra stuff, which makes the process less dramatic. So that I think it's asking people to relinquish their like self-victimization and give up the opportunity to be taken care of in a like infantilizing way. I think that's a lot to ask people to part ways with. It's awkward because it's completely the opposite of at least how I was raised. So that's how I've navigated, and again, it doesn't, there are still things about that, when we take like really intense like constellations or situations that are kind of past the point of repair. It gets a little murky and I'm still working that part out of this, but that's where I land with maybe I'll stop there. Yeah, that's where I land with
that. It's so multifactorial and there's so many valid ways to look at the topic. Personally, I have found so much empowerment in viewing illness as metaphor and trying to find what my body is telling me when I'm sick and taking responsibility for my health in that way to learn to tell a new story. And I think about when I was in my 20s and both my parents died and it was really devastating. And I had basically every symptom of fibromyalgia. I was tired all the time. I was depressed. I mean, I wasn't depressed. I was grieving. I was just like emotionally devastated. I had so much pain in my body. I had crazy weird pains all the time. And I had the trigger points. I had every single sore spot. When you look at the fibromyalgia picture of press on these, and if it's sore, that's the only diagnostic test for fibromyalgia. A huge percentage of the population is sore on those places. Like there are whole.
What are the places?
Oh, it's along the spine. It's here. We could get you should check. You might have fibromyalgia.
My whole body hurts all the time.
Yeah, if you press on it.
Does. I think it's from going to the gym and not stretching enough, but my whole body does hurt all the time. Anyway, go on.
I was also having a lot of heart palpitations. And I went to see my mentor, Tarone, who'd been one of my herb teachers, who was a physician. But before she was a physician, she had apprenticed with her grandfather, who was a medicine man. And then she had been the medic on the Taekwondo U.S. Olympic team. And she had been a home birth midwife, and she had run an herb clinic. Like she was just a really wise person. And I just told her, like, I'm having heart palpitations, my whole body hurts. And just sat down and said, tell me about your parents. Tell me what you're really feeling. And, I told some of it. I cried, and she said, I could see how that could make your heart skip a beat. It makes sense. You got thrown out of your rhythm. And it was one of the most empowering, wonderful conversations I've ever had with the doctor. And then a few years later, after my dad died, pretty soon after my mom had died, Tarone wasn't practicing. I went to see this other really cool doctor in town, Aaron Kaufman, who's a osteopathic family practice physician, really cool guy. And I was like, I'm sad all the time, and I want Prozac. I want to feel better. Give me some drugs. My body hurts. I'm sad all the time. I know I have fibromyalgia. And he said, you don't have depression. You don't have fibromyalgia. You're grieving. If you were not sad all the time, I'd be worried about you, because being sad all the time is very normal when your parents have died. And I'm not going to give you any of those drugs, because, he went on and he was like, they don't work. They make you worse. They're just going to numb you out. And he said, I don't want to see you back in here until you've followed this advice. And so you have to take a walk every day and quit eating sugar. And that, again, was so profoundly empowering to me. Now, I feel like for a lot of those people who were on the conversation on the Twitter feed, those would have been very infuriating interactions with physicians for them. But for me, it saved me from a lifetime of identifying as being chronically ill and being on medications, that I had those two healers in my life. And that's the piece I don't understand, is why people get so angry when we tell these stories of healing, and when we offer up the perspective that it's possible to get better with by taking it into your own hands and healing your story, healing your mythic adventure of a life that you're living.
Right, because it is very empowering to heal yourself and to make yourself feel better, whether that's, mentally or physically. It feels awesome. Like it makes you like yourself better. It builds self-confidence. It makes you feel like a sovereign being and like a powerful being. And I think that people probably feel insulted by, I think that what they read into what I was saying, in any case, I'm not going to speak for you two, but was that people wanted to stay sick, like they enjoyed being victims because they didn't want to get better. But I mean, the truth is, and it might sound insulting to say this, is that it is in some ways easier to have an excuse and to be like, okay, well, I have this, so I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't go to work. I can't go to the gym. I can't go for a walk. I can't go to that social event. I can't change my lifestyle. This is just how it is. And like I don't know how to explain that, but that is a reality, and you can call it victim blaming if you want, but you're the one who's sort of choosing that victim status. And again, it doesn't mean that I don't think that these people are experiencing pain. I found it very helpful when I was having severe anxiety because I was leaving a relationship with somebody who was like a severe crack addict, and one can imagine that that would be a stressful thing. And so I was having like crazy anxiety every day, and I was talking to my therapist about it, and she was doing cognitive behavior therapy with me. And like one of the things that I did that helped a lot was like every time I started oh gosh, what is the word that I'm thinking of? Sort of you're in a cycle in your brain and you're just stressing yourself out and you're fixating. Was to leave the house and go for a walk with the dog, because it just like it takes you out of that space. And of course it makes you feel better because you're outside and you're in the fresh air, and you have to focus on something else, including your pet. And you realize that there's like a whole other world around you, and you have to interact with other people. Like you talk to the barista, so you're sort of naturally polite and you smile, and then you feel better. And it's very helpful, and it's a little small thing, and you could say, oh, I can't do that because I'm too tired or I'm too stressed or I'm too whatever, but it really does help. And if you want to help yourself, then there's things that you can do. And but you know, at the same time, what like I haven't struggled with chronic illness, and I can imagine that that would be a very hard thing to deal with. But I mean, yeah, like I just I have never heard a man. I mean, there were men on Twitter that said, well, I have long COVID and it's destroyed my life. Blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know you. I've never met you before. In my real life, I've never met anyone with this stuff. Like,
what I found was the defensiveness, that there was one woman who really wanted to pull me into the argument, and then I got sucked into it a little bit. And she said it was completely offensive for me to host a podcast called How I Healed, because I was implying that I knew how to heal people, or I can't even remember. She was really mad about it. It was insulting to her. And then I said, would you prefer that I have a separate podcast called How I Stayed Chronically Ill? And then that made her even more angry. So it just, it's a no-win situation. And, I know the people are suffering. They really are. It reminds me so much of the conversation around natural birth, though, that people get angry if you talk about how great your birth was and how it was a completely unmedicalized experience. And you'll get, if you do that online, you'll get literally hundreds of women yelling at you that they would have died, their babies would have died, and how dare you say childbirth is anything but a horror show. It seemed like the exact same dynamic.
I do think the only exception to that, I think, is I mean, I think for the majority of people just do not want to take to know that they have that kind of agency. Because once you realize you have agency in your health, you realize you have agency everywhere. And it's like frightening to be like, oh my gosh, like everything is flipped upside down. That's how I felt when I, took my health into my own hands, and everything just started to crumble. So it's, I think not everyone is ready for that. And I also think, in GNM, there's sometimes resolutions for conflicts are death. It's death.
Yes.
Right? Like, and that there, there's some, one of the concepts in GNM is, your body's like only adapting at the pace. I'm probably butchering this a little bit, but think about like the body's only giving you what it can handle. Like it's only going to give you what you can handle, ideally. And the sadness about all the pharmaceutical interference is like, we don't know what your baseline is. We don't know what you're capable of, because there's all of this kind of shoving down of what's going on. But I think even without pharmaceuticals, sometimes to take things into our own hands, to see what's underneath, like, can kill a person because it's just too much. And so I wonder, it's very easy to be like, they should come off all these drugs so that they can, yada yada. But like, if we're measuring quality of life, like life expectancy, it's like, how are we measuring like what is right? And this is also tragic again because it's under all of this interference. But I do wonder if a small percentage of those people just know that they don't want to go to that place of healing, whether it's facing childhood trauma or sexual abuse or whatever, because
why would you want to? Like, honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to do that.
It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage because you don't always know what's on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's,
yeah, sorry, go on.
well, it's complicated stuff. People really are suffering. And I do think people, there's, it's similar to the Botox stuff. Like it's this, my worth is based on how other people see me, and I need validation of my suffering, or my suffering is worse, I guess. It's like, it's a terrible cycle to be in. And similar, like I need more and more lip filler. I got to get more. I have to have constant validation of my suffering. And if you imply that that it's possible that I could not be suffering, then who am I? You know, if
Yeah.
my denying my existence, like where have we heard that before as well?
Well, and I presumably feels like a relief if you've been feeling bad for a really long time and you don't understand why you're feeling bad, to get a diagnosis. And you know, women do. You know, I've had bullshit experiences with doctors, and I know that lots and lots of women have those experiences where what they're feeling isn't validated, or you know, the doctor brushes them off. And of course there's this history of treating women like they're hysterical when they talk about their problems and issues. So I do understand all that, and so I also understand that it would feel like a relief for somebody to say, oh, this explains it, here's your diagnoses.
Right.
But I don't like, I mean, I suppose one of the big things that I'm asking is, what do these diagnoses help? Like, how does it help to say, oh, I have long COVID, or I have chronic fatigue, or I have fibromyalgia? Okay, and what? Then that you just have that, and then that's you. Like, is this gonna help you feel better in any way? What is the treatment for this stuff?
Allopathic medicine has nothing curative for any of this. And there's a subset of these chronic suffering conditions that the medicine seems to be making it worse, from my perspective of dealing with patients with these illnesses, that the longer we treat it with the medicine, the worse it gets, whether it's depression, whether it's, you know, any form of mental illness. People aren't getting better on these drugs. They're getting worse. There might be an original improvement, and then but the long-term outcomes are horrible. Endometriosis, that like our success rate in allopathic medicine is terrible for treating that. Fibromyalgia, there's no cure for that, and there's nothing but meds that don't work very well. Many of the autoimmune conditions, I mean, certain autoimmune conditions do seem to be responding to these biologics. That's a whole other ethical conversation of these, you know, genetically engineered products made in human mouse hybrids. That's a weird thing, but some people do seem to be getting better on that. I can't judge someone who's losing their ability to walk from multiple sclerosis for taking these weird drugs, you know, but most autoimmune conditions, we have nothing curative to offer, nothing that actually makes you feel better. So what is the point of getting the diagnosis? Why do you need the validation of the system to give you the name when the system has nothing to offer you that's curative?
Right. Yeah.
Right. With any test, or even with lab work, you know, I haven't had lab work in maybe 4 years, and anytime it's come up to even consider, okay, well, should I get lab? Okay, well, the question I always ask myself, well, what would I do with that information? How would my life change in any way? And that's how I counsel. That's how I counsel. You know, that's how I counseled women in birth. Like, okay, you want to get this test. Well, what would you do with the results? How would the process of your pregnancy change? What decisions would you make with this information? And yeah, so unless you have a, and then this is how the doctors present it, right? It's like, well, we have this drug, but we got to test you first. Okay, oh, I need to be tested in order to get the drug, right? So you create the diagnosis so that you can sell the solution. It's like, it's very simple.
Well, and they literally do that. There's that book from the late 90s or early 2000s called Selling Sickness. I think it's Moynihan is the author, and it's well documented. He's a journalist who goes to the medical industry conferences and where they're discussing inventing new diagnoses to then sell the diagnosis, so then they can sell the drugs, like premenstrual dysphoria disorder, PMDD. ADHD. I mean, the word Adderall was invented by a bunch of marketers, and it means ADD for all. That's what it means. That's what it came from.
This is why I hate the ROGD.
Yes.
This is why I was like, red flag, red flag. And then that's where, like, when that, like, I felt like I started to create categories of like the gender critical sphere of like, who is using this term? Okay. Like, who's still into pharma, who's still into vaccines? Like, it was like clarifying to like, who is still buying into that system, even though they don't believe putting children on puberty blockers and wrong sex hormones, but still buying into this therapeutic model that the best thing for this child is to sit in a small room with a stranger with who's going to prescribe them like other psychiatric, like other pharmaceuticals, just not the gender ones. I mean,
yeah, right. Well,
yeah, it's another mental illness that you need to be diagnosed
right.
with, that you need pills for. That's the real problem.
It was so many of the detransitioners are still very attached to, well, my PTSD, my anxiety, my autism,
yes,
like very much like I long for the days where people can just start saying, I'm a weirdo with time management problems, instead of, I'm on the spectrum and I have ADHD, and it's like so much better to just embrace your quirks.
I mean, it also just like, I rather work 2 hours a day and make tons of money than work a 9 to 5 and make an average amount of money. Like,
like I'm a little bit lazy. I want to sleep until noon. I also want to have an income. That's fine.
Right.
I procrastinate. I don't do things that I don't want to do right away. I have bad time management skills. I identify as having math dysphoria, because I can't count properly ever. Or math dyslexia is what, sorry, that's what I identify as. I think I might actually have real dyslexia too, based on the amount of typos that I insert into everything.
Oh, I'm the typo queen too, Megan. I have so many typos. And I do think when it comes to like women, I think a lot of the exhaustion and the burnout and, the pain, like a lot of that, I think can be resolved just by understanding that you're like a cyclical being, that you have seasons of the month, and that your body needs different things throughout the month, and therefore if you can manage your time and your physical activities. Like, you can't, like, your body's not going to respond in the same way to running on the treadmill every single day of the month like a male body would, right? So I think there's a lot to be uncovered with that. And I think that adjustment alone, I know, transforms women's lives. Just knowing that they are not running on a 24/7 hormonal cycle. So
like, you're not a robot. Like, it's like some days you have less energy than other days, and there's no reason for it. It's like, technically I did all the things that I normally do. I got 8 hours of sleep, and I took all my vitamins, and I ate the same foods, and yet I felt like shit when I tried to exercise, or like, I'm so clumsy today, like those things happen to me at various times during the month, where it's like I'm breaking things and walking into things and like stubbing my toe and like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Or, I'm flakier than normal and I'm already very flaky. Like, or just, I don't know. I mean, you're human.
Right. It's like we could spend all day being like, oh, it was my cycle time. It's astrology. It's the conflict shock I had from last week. It's, it's like, and that becomes its own obsession outside of the pharma, obsession diagnoses. So anything can become a religious practice.
Well, absolutely. And that's what it is. And in the absence of religion, and the absence of any kind of patriotism now, the only unifying narrative we have in certainly North American culture, definitely American, US culture, is medicine, right? That's our unifying belief system. And it has become religious that way. And that's how people find meaning. And that's how people define themselves. And that's how people relate to other people. Like, constantly, I'm hearing people just dropping medical jargon in their daily conversations with even with acquaintances at the grocery store, they're talking about their diagnoses, and it's this is now our only unifying narrative, and that's really frightening. Like this is who's running our country, and unlike the drug cartels that are, you know, running large parts of Mexico, people trust them. Like people actually think they're good people.
Yeah.
Oh,
They think that they're here to help, which is crazy. It's crazy that after all that Big Pharma has done, people still trust the pharmaceutical companies. Like it's crazy after what they did with Oxycontin that anybody would ever trust these fucking evil people. Like they're
Totally.
evil. They're evil. And of course, after what they did with COVID and the vaccines, during the AIDS crises, like
yeah.
I feel like people have such short-term memories, and it's very troubling. I mean,
mind-blowing.
it's all bullshit. They just keep renaming new products, like all
Mhm.
of the depression meds, all of the anxiety meds. They're just, you know, coming up with the same things that people get addicted to and that have all these horrible side effects, and just, you know, they name them something else and repackage it and resell it, maybe to treat something else. That's what they did with female sexual dysfunction, which is a thing that still really angers me. It seems to have disappeared from the conversation a bit temporarily, but I'm sure it'll pop up again. You know, female sexual dysfunction, which is not a real thing. And again, I'm sure it's a thing that women felt very relieved to discover they have, because why don't they want to have sex with their husbands anymore? It's totally mysterious. You know, it couldn't possibly be that they're, you know, in a bad relationship. They don't feel close to him. You know, they have kids, and so they're busy with their kids and they don't feel particularly sexy. That desire wanes over years. Naturally, like that's totally normal for you to have less sexual desire for, well, at least for women. It's not necessarily true of all men in my experience. I know that does happen to some men, but
Yeah, but I mean, look at the Viagra market. I mean, the ED med market is huge because men are not as sexually functional as they age, because nature doesn't want a bunch of 60-year-old dads.
Yeah, of course. And what they prescribed to these women, or what they kept trying to patent to prescribe to these women for female sexual dysfunction, was an antidepressant.
Right, totally. Right.
Like, oh, do you feel more sexy now that you don't feel depressed? I mean, I don't think that it actually worked. And you know, a lot of feminists actually fought them on this. When I was doing my master's degree, I was studying with this woman, Thea Caccione, who was fighting against I'm trying to remember what they were trying to call the drug at the time. Fighting against the concept of female sexual dysfunction in general, including the you know, ability for these drugs to be prescribed to these women. But I mean, it was all like, it's just like normal stuff that they're turning into diagnoses. Like usually when you would talk to these women, they would talk about like relationship problems. I mean, like if your partner was disrespectful to you, or you felt like you were doing all of the childcare and all of the cooking and all of the cleaning, or you guys just didn't feel close in general, or if he's abusive, or like, why would you want to have sex with somebody like that? Like there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
Or if you're tired.
They used to give lobotomies for that. Literally, they'd say, you know, she'll be better at complying with her wifely duties if we give her a lobotomy.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Right.
It's frightening what our foremothers went through.
Anyway, and then I mean, before we move into the Munchausen stuff, the people like us said the comparison to men's coping mechanism was what stirred a lot of women. So with regard to my theory around like women being more comfortable with victim status, but you know, I think I don't know, sometimes I think like feminism's overcorrected a bit, because of course it's okay to be emotional and to talk about your emotions and to talk about having a hard time. And of course, you know, you should be open about like what you're suffering, whether that's like trauma or health issues or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, you know, and now you can't even offer a solution. Otherwise, you're accused of being judgmental. like if you say, you know, like maybe you could try this, like rather than going on antidepressants, why don't you try doing these things, like the things that we talked about earlier, which now are going to end up sounding cliched because I repeated them so many times, but things like sunlight, exercise, paying attention to what you're putting in your body, getting enough sleep. Getting enough sleep like has such a big impact. It's crazy. Like I feel so depressed and stressed out about my life if I don't get enough sleep. And I usually do get enough sleep because it's something that I prioritize in my life. And people probably think I'm lazy for that because I refuse to get less than like 8 or 9 hours of sleep every night. But I feel healthy and I can do my job and my brain functions. And I don't feel like shit in my mind or my body. I mean, I don't know how people function on like 5-6 hours of sleep. And a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I honestly think when it comes to sleep, everybody's different. Like, I'm also someone who needs a lot of sleep, minimum 8-9 hours. I mean, I could easily sleep like 11 hours a night. Easily.
Yeah, I could be happy with 10 probably.
Yeah, I love sleep. It's like so good. It's so
the
good.
best.
I love it too. But like, I have plenty of friends who aren't like that, like female and male, and
Right.
like if anyone here is into like the human design stuff, like your makeup, like if you're someone who's more of like a healer or like a guide, like you require more reset time. It's the projector type, so like each there are ways to kind of categorize like who we are, what we need, but the projector type needs more reset time. Like, and one way that we reset is through sleep. So yeah, I think it's different. It's funny, I definitely hold the belief that like our health is like that we need to eat meat. For sure. I eat meat. I'm a recovering vegetarian of 8 years. And as this guy that I follow, his name is Tommy John, he's like, what if it's not all about the fucking food? He's like, what if it's all like coming into play, like all at the same time, like the energy of how you eat the food. And he's like, a happy donut is better than a sad salad. And I'm like, I think there's like a lot of truth to that. So
I disagree with that. I think donuts are bad for you. I disagree. I feel like I'll feel worse if I eat a donut.
I think we need sugar. I think we need honey, especially like natural sugars.
Yeah, honey is good for you.
But yeah, to a degree, I think if someone's exclusively eating fast food and donuts, they're probably not going to be in a great place.
Well, and people are miserable when they have, I mean, not to pathologize it, but that orthorexia that, if they're so worried they're going to eat something bad, that becomes really bad for their health.
Yeah. And it's hard and like this nuance is so tricky because we're living in like a totally corrupted food system and pharmaceutical industry. So it's like even to try on this way of thinking is like it's definitely like a particular flavor. But
well, it's hard to even know what's in your food. It's hard to control what's in your food. So that can be 100%. A real stress for people, I suppose, if they become hyper afraid of like, oh, if I eat this and it has like seed oils in it or whatever. I mean, there's just, unfortunately, like I wish that we did have more control, and the more control you have in terms of, if you can grow your own food and kill your own meat and milk your own cows, then that's awesome. But most people don't have access to that kind of lifestyle, unfortunately. But I mean, it's like somebody said, a lot of people don't want to admit they'd have less depression and anxiety if they stopped drinking alcohol and smoking weed every day. But I think that's also true. People don't want to change their diets either. And I think they resent being told or it being implied that maybe if they change their diets, just like changing anything else in their lifestyle that they enjoy doing, that they might get healthier. And like, if somebody tells me, if you quit drinking, you'd feel better and be healthier, I believe them. And I just say, I don't want to quit drinking because I like drinking wine and like, I like going out to, have fun with my friends. But it's not like I think it doesn't have an impact, of course it does. And I like it, I suppose if it started to make me sick, I would have to reconsider, but it's not for now, luckily.
Well, yeah, people would be more pushy with that advice if someone was always talking about how they're always tired and they have headaches, their body hurts, their stomach hurts, they're vomiting blood. It's like, yeah, you should stop drinking. Like, it's not good. My
Consider
liver's
it.
enlarged, I'm turning yellow. Like, these are,
Yeah.
definitely there's a place to give that feedback to somebody. But if you seem like a happy, functional, healthy person, why give that feedback to somebody? Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in the defensiveness piece of it because,
Yeah.
like so many things that people get triggered by, that's the question of why does your statement provoke such anger and such this attacking response
Yeah.
rather
I
than
wondered about
just
that.
rather than just
Like
saying, oh,
curiosity.
I disagree. You know what? People don't say that anymore. If like that, well, I disagree for these reasons. It's like, oh, what kind of feminist are you? And why do you hate
You're a
women?
bad person. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it was like, you're evil, you're a horrible person, you're a piece of shit. Way worse things than that too, that I'm not going to say out loud. But like, I'm a really, really bad person and I deserve bad things. And a lot of people said that. People
Yeah.
also claimed that I was making that tweet to make money,
I saw that.
which I think is really, really a crazy thing. As if I've ever done anything in my life to, like just to make money. Like, oh, if I say this, somebody will pay me for it. Like, I think I would be doing a lot better in life. But
You
like the
should have
defensiveness to the point of like that extreme hate, like real
Right.
serious
How do we
anger.
do that? Like, does anyone know how to get paid by someone who
No, I
you
don't
just
know.
say
I'm
what
trying to find
like
out, man.
I know I know it's a thing, but like I don't know logistically how it would
I
work
know.
for you.
Like when people are saying like, make money off social media, I'm like, tell me how to do
Yeah.
that, please.
You could make so much money off your mean tweets. It's just,
I would love that.
pay more for more mean tweets. I do want to, I am sitting with this, my compassion that a lot of people feel terrible. And I acknowledge that. I see that. I'm very interested in how to help people feel better. And a lot of people get very upset when you suggest anything that might make them feel better. I'm also okay just sitting with people feeling bad too, because I think there is that piece that we've lost of the normalcy of suffering. I mean, that's like the
Right.
very ancient Buddhist tradition. That's the first noble truth is life is suffering. Life is suffering is just what this place is woven out of. Certainly, in the Catholic upbringing, that's true. But not that I'm recommending Catholicism or even Buddhism to anyone, but these were acknowledged by billions of people for thousands of years that we suffer. And I could sit with people suffering for sure. And then if people are wanting help, that's where it gets this minefield where people get really, really upset if you make suggestions on how maybe they could feel better.
I mean, yeah, I'm interested in the defensiveness piece too, because the response was so extreme. It seemed like there's a lot of women who identify way more women than I had any idea who were identifying as having chronic fatigue or long COVID or fibromyalgia. The fibromyalgia thing was big, according to Twitter. I've never met anybody in real life who's identified as having fibromyalgia, but I've seen women online identifying with that. I have met women in real life who say they have chronic fatigue, and long COVID. One person, I think.
People don't understand that fibromyalgia is not a diagnosis you want having written in you don't want that written in your medical chart. That's it's not a diagnosis that physicians want to treat. It usually it has a connotation. It's similar to borderline personality disorder that can be very harmful to you as someone trying to figure out what's wrong with you to get that diagnosis. There are women who are developing MS or who are developing like lupus, like really serious organ function issues that don't get the care they need because they've been given that diagnosis, which basically means some doctor has decided you're a whiner. Like it's a diagnosis of exclusion. It means all your tests are normal, that it's not well respected, and often you'll get worse care if you get identified with that diagnosis. You're not going to get better care in the medical system if you tell all your providers you have that. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's the truth. That's the truth within medicine.
And
sorry. Nope, go ahead.
I was just going to say on the defensiveness note, the alternative would be, okay, taking ownership, responsibility, realizing that you have a lot more agency, and then also backtracking and like going through every like doctor that ever gave you like bogus information and prescribed you a pill that made you worse and dependent, and like the information from your parents or whoever was like kind of responsible for your health. And like that's a really scary process for some people. It was for me. Like I went through it with the HPV vaccine, like reading just all about how it was fast tracked and all the injury and just everything. The fact that I was a guinea pig. Got in 2007, all 3 doses, and I remember feeling deeply betrayed by my parents, by my pediatrician, and it was a very scary experience. Like in my early 20s, to be like, wow, nobody knew like what to do, and they were all pawns. Like I don't think my pediatrician maliciously was trying to injure me or hurt me, of course, but just seeing that no one was like coming to save me, that and I think that's the process that I think that's part of the resistance, is not wanting to have to face the domino effect of that coming to that information.
Yeah, because I think then you end up with anger and there's nothing that you can do about it because it already happened to you and you're mad. And if it injured you and impacted your health in such a negative, awful way, then that's a really horrible thing to have to contend with.
Yeah. And it is like reconciling with an abusive family or with like leaving an abusive religion. But in some ways it's worse because the medical profession has a monopoly on certain technologies that any of us might need. Like if you have a bone sticking out, you need to go there. Like you have like that. They're the only people that have that technology. They're the only people who have access to that kind of help. So you can't ever I mean, I guess you could decide that you wouldn't go to a doctor even under those circumstances. But for most of us, you can't ever fully divorce from this system that's full of really terrible abusive aspects that are making us all sicker and sicker.
That is such a great point. You can't just leave and never go back. You have to leave and then also consciously fawn to get the things that you want.
You can't get them anywhere else. It's illegal. It's practicing medicine without a license if anyone else can help you out with that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, one person had said in the comments on YouTube, I haven't read your tweet, but what you're saying here, I posted about this on YouTube and sort of explained what I had said and explained my view a little bit. And then a bunch of people commented, mostly angrily. What you're saying here is very arrogant and condescending, which I get that a lot. So, okay, I'll take that. Maybe I am arrogant and condescending.
It's your disorder.
It's my personality disorder.
Oh my God, so funny.
People, I mean, it's not like I'm a particularly nice person, right? Like I'm not going to pretend that I have like a really kind demeanor and that everything I say is very kind, because it's just not true. So I don't know. Sorry, I guess, but not that sorry. It's just not my personality. People identifying with these illnesses have often done everything in their power to heal themselves and have not yet found the right tools, knowledge, support to heal. What you're right about is that people are really suffering and that trauma often has something to do with it, but that doesn't help to tell people. It doesn't help to tell people they want to be victims, that they don't want to heal, that they haven't done enough to heal, that they don't want to listen to good advice, because it's not true. And it's insulting. It actually makes my blood boil, because I know many people in real life who have or have had these illnesses and they have done everything they can to heal. Some have managed it, some haven't yet. But I'd like to remind you that people have different mental, social, financial resources, and often it makes it hard to get the kind of help / treatments you need, because people do need help in addition to self-healing. Society and healthcare systems are not always very helpful either. It's very easy to give advice as a healthy person, but you don't know what it's like before you get sick yourself. And I'm going to skip a little bit here because this is...
I really have a lot to say.
I'm not... There's a lot of comments like these that are very long also. I'm not surprised if other people, women in parentheses, got angry too. I wish you can develop more empathy and understanding for other women and their experiences in the future. We are the people you're supposed to be defending as a feminist, but what you're doing here is the opposite. P.S. If your argument is that people in Mexico don't have those illnesses, it doesn't in any way take away the suffering of those who do. Dismissing the illnesses symptoms as fake doesn't help. I don't know why as a feminist, well, I don't identify as a feminist anymore, and that's why. So screw you, but not literally screw you, person who commented. But I don't identify as a feminist anymore because I got so sick of people saying, well, you have to believe this or you have to say this, otherwise you're not a feminist. And I was like, okay, I'm not. Let's move forward. But I don't know why as a feminist, it's like that believe all women thing. Like I'm supposed to agree with or respect all women or validate what women said in order to be a feminist. Like I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to respect everything that you say. I don't have to like everything that you say. I don't have to think you're right. And I think there's been a lot of overcorrection in feminism in terms of like not empowering women and telling women that actually they can't empower themselves and they do need to depend on the medical system. And, you know, like if you have a mental illness, like you have a mental illness and you should talk about that openly and nobody can judge you for being on antidepressants. And it's like, well, now I don't agree with that. Like, okay, you want to use the medical industry to get these diagnoses and then get treatment. Like, again, there's no fucking treatment for fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue in the medical system. So I don't even know what you're talking about. But like, I don't know. Okay, like this is the main thing is, okay, you feel insulted. Okay, you feel condescended to. You think I'm arrogant. Fine. Okay.
Right.
That's okay. You can feel that way. Like, it doesn't mean I'm a horrible person or like, you know, like, I don't know. Okay, you feel condescended to. So what? Maybe I was being condescending. Maybe it is insulting. Maybe you feel insulted. I wasn't, you know, maybe I am insulting you. Maybe I don't have a lot of respect for people who want to stay victims for life. It doesn't mean that I think every woman who's identifying with these diagnoses or these illnesses or who feels bad is choosing to be a victim. But I also, you know, think you should just like lie around in bed and say that you can't work and there's nothing, you can't do anything and you can't be responsible and you know, can't show up or get anything done because you have chronic fatigue. Like,
well, and that gets into the other question of we're moving into more and more and more people identifying as, behaving as, therefore being chronically ill. What is the responsibility of the well to these people? Like and like we saw that during COVID, right? That the healthy were literally being held hostage by the sick. And that's not how historically a healthy society is going to function, you know, and how is this going to happen? Like I see it in the children, I see it in the youth. What's going to happen when only 10% of the population, the working age population is capable of working? What is the responsibility of that healthy subset of the population to the chronically ill? And these are conversations people don't want to have, and people consider, you know, my 25-year-old socialist inside me is horrified I'm even asking the question. It's calling me a fascist for, you know, internally for asking it. But we should strive for as many people as possible to be healthy. And these people who are expecting everyone else to take care of them are in for a rude awakening when 90% of the population is chronically ill.
Well, isn't that exactly what happened during COVID, where a whole bunch of people said, I have an autoimmune disorder, or I have whatever.
Right.
So you guys all have to mask up and you have to stay home and you can't go to work and you need to keep your kids home from school and you have to get the vaccine. Otherwise, you're killing me. No, fuck you. You stay home.
Yeah.
And then we have the actually debilitatingly like ill, sick, disabled, like severely vaccine injured, actual autism, like, that's the question that is posed in the first Vaxxed documentary, is like, when the parents of these children are deceased, who is going to receive this whole population of like actually really, really disabled people? And so you've got that, and you've got all the psychologically sick people who won't leave their house, and you need everything delivered and still
Mhm.
wear purple gloves and masks and all of that. I mean, it's the question you posed, Mary Lou, but like, what happens when there are only a couple of us left who are able to actually like lift things
Mhm.
and move about the world without debilitating fear and anxiety, and it's really scary to think about.
Mhm. Well, and the goal should be to be as healthy and functional as possible. And I think we all need to take a close look at our medical system and understand that's not what's happening. We're just managing chronic illness, and that it shouldn't be controversial to say that. And I get it. Not everyone feels healthy and functional right now, but shouldn't that be the goal, to get everybody to the highest level of health and functionality?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, and to reject what the medical system is offering, i.e. what big pharma is offering to you, because it's not helping and it's making things worse.
Well, maybe we should segue into the
Yeah.
Gypsy Rose
Sorry,
Blanchard
this
story,
went on
where
for a long time.
and it's the perfect example of the benefits of the social benefits of chronic illness, right? Like, that's
exactly
what this mother was doing to her child was all about getting social capital out of the experience.
Well, and Munchausen itself, as I understand it, is for a lot of people, not everybody. Sometimes people have like weird fetishes, I guess, around chopping off their limbs and things like that. But like a lot of it, especially for women, it sounds like, this was what I was, trying to research this week and read about and listen to some interviews and stuff. But that women in particular with Munchausen were looking for pity. Like they were looking for attention for whatever reason. Maybe they're feeling isolated, like maybe their husband's not around, like they have kids and the husband ignores them all and doesn't pay any attention to them. Maybe they were abandoned when they were a kid and they have trauma from that. Or some other form of trauma, and they don't have the kinds of like relationships and community around them that they want or that they need. And so this is how they figured out a really good way to get attention and to get pity. And maybe that can be really addictive for people. And then, of course, by proxy, through their child. Like, and yeah, so in the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, her mother, I think her mother's mother died when Dee Dee, the mother, was a kid. And I think I read in a couple of places that the mother, like there was speculation that Dee Dee had sort of like allowed her mother to die because she was her caretaker when she was younger. And they had speculated that she had kind of allowed her to starve to death. And then, yeah, she got a lot of money and attention and like trips to Disneyland and housing and all sorts of stuff by keeping her daughter sick and dependent. Have you ever met anyone who has Munchausen, Mary Lou, in your practice?
Not in my practice, but when I worked as a psych nurse at the public psych hospital, I took care of 2 patients with Munchausen's. And in this, I mean, the stories are, I can't give details of that, but like, it's the stories I've read in the journals of people like literally drinking bleach and then ending up with a J tube, like they've destroyed their esophagus and now they have to be fed through a tube in their stomach and then putting poison in that. And I remember one training that I did, they were talking about a patient who had, she had a port in like a central line that someone had put, and she would pull her own blood out of it with a syringe to make herself severely anemic. Like really bizarre self-harm. And to look, it's like, oh, I have cancer or pernicious anemia. There must be some reason I'm so anemic when they're pulling their own blood out.
And what is that about? That's about,
I mean, that's pretty severe mental illness. It's you'd have to sit with each story, but probably probably quite a few of those people have a story where the only time they felt loved as a child was when they were seriously ill.
right. And then how does that transfer to the kid, do you think? I mean, because again, from what I was reading about and what I was learning, the Munchausen by proxy thing was really majority women who were doing this to their dependents.
I don't know of a single case where it's been a father. I mean, maybe there have been, but it's not a common form of male child abuse. That this is the mother is doing things to the child to make it look like the child is severely sick and going from doctor to doctor. Sometimes just malingering, sometimes just making up symptoms that will then get a workup. Like if the mother says she's seeing seizures, we have to trust her, right? Like I may not witness a seizure I have many patients with seizure disorder and I've never witnessed them have a seizure, but I believe they've had seizures. In the same way, if a parent comes to me and says their kid is having seizures, we have to do this whole workup. There are the system's overwhelmed. Kids can end up then on seizure meds. It's not that hard to find some burned out doctor to just like go ahead and write the prescription because they have to get on to their next, person of the 40 people they're seeing that day. Kids getting put through scanners, people, again, feeding their kids poison, did she remove her kid's teeth or did that happen due to other things that were happening to Gypsy? I know she lost most of her teeth. That's pretty weird. Yeah.
I don't know about that part, actually. Sorry, I didn't find out about that. But I know not only did she keep her sick, but she also forced her to talk in that squeaky voice and to pretend that she needed a wheelchair. And she told Gypsy Rose that she had hearing problems and, that she couldn't see properly, and told her that she couldn't walk. And it was, of course, when she started getting older, she finally figured out that she wasn't sick and she didn't have any problems with her vision or her hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And started to rebel.
She gave her a feeding tube. That's horrible. Just horrible. Yeah.
So crazy. I was reading up on why, what would cause a person to do this, to themselves or, by proxy, in this case. And it's what you've already touched on, there's it's an extreme response to being severely devalued. So it happens with veterans. They'll come back and they'll develop a Munchausen and develop this grandiosity sphere or messiah complex. And I wonder about, I didn't read into it too much, but I wonder about her mother's childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And if she were, let's say she were just beaten as a child, you're so devalued so hard that you'll do anything to inflate your sense of power, even if it means getting the spotlight by making up this crazy series of illnesses.
Right. I think there's a thing that if you're a victim of abuse and you want your abuser to stop abusing you and love you again by playing the victim rather than, like, abusers don't like it when you fight back. They don't like it when women fight back, when they say no, when they don't like break down crying and act like victims, like instead of being like, fuck you, like I'm not falling for your manipulation, or, you know, push back or leave or whatever. But if you play the victim, then sometimes your abuser will take pity on you and stop the abuse temporarily, of course, and, you know, love you again, right? So I wonder if there could be something like that in the backgrounds of these women, where they were sort of trained that, you know, playing the victim and playing helpless, and I'm breaking down, and help me will keep you safe and gain you love and affection.
And she wasn't just getting love and affection for her sick daughter. She was getting, again, like you said, trips to Disney World and free housing and money. And it becomes like you're a gambling addict at that point, where I'm going to keep doing this risky thing and more money keeps coming in. It's amazing she got away with it. And I feel like I think there was only one doctor who ever voiced suspicion about it.
Yeah, it is amazing she got away with it. And she changed her birth certificate a number of times too, somehow, which is a really hard thing to do, so that she could pretend that she was like 14 when she was actually 19. And I think everything started falling apart because she started having a relationship with this guy online who turned into the murderer or co-murderer.
I feel terrible of him. Yeah. Go ahead.
He's a psycho. Like, he sounds like an actual, like, sadist psychopath.
Yeah, he looks really just really developmentally disabled to me. Like he's dysmorphic, his face is dysmorphic. They said he has a registered IQ of 80. Like he's probably a child abuse survivor. It's kind of, he looks malnourished in the pictures. And yeah, in a way, I mean, he's a psychopath and he's a bit of a victim of the crazy too. I mean, he's doing a life sentence.
Right. Yeah. That's all a factor as well. I mean, I think he got her, Gypsy Rose, into like a BDSM relationship.
Ugh,
I read
yeah.
that too.
And
Yeah.
online, and then in real life, and then of course like wanted to rape the corpse, which Gypsy Rose stopped him from doing, but he sounded pretty sadistic.
Okay, yeah, all right, I didn't hear about that
Gonna
point.
need to do a little cleanse after tonight.
Yeah, he should be in jail forever. Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I mean, yeah, I mean the whole it's so much more common than I realized, both Munchausen and Munchausen by proxy. Like there's so many cases of people making themselves sick on purpose and wanting to get test after test after test and just wanting to spend all their time at the hospital and the doctor's office. And it's weird. Like it's a real thing for a lot of people wanting to be sick and wanting to be the victim and wanting to be pitied. And I totally don't relate to that. Like I feel like if people feel sorry for me, I feel embarrassed. And then of course, I mean, I remember one of the first times I think I started hearing about Munchausen by proxy was in relation to Amanda Jett Knox, who's now identifying as Rowan Jett Knox, who is like a famous Canadian trans activist whose entire family is trans, including herself now. At first, it was just her wife and her child who were trans. And then now she's identifying as a man. And people have been accusing her of Munchausen by proxy for many years now by basically transing her kid. And I think that's probably true of a lot of these trans moms and parents. You know, I think it's mostly moms, but I've seen dads do it too, parading their trans child all over social media, and it's totally disgusting and unforgivable. Like I don't know, I do think it's abusive I don't know if I would go so far as to say they should be charged with abuse. Perhaps an argument can be made around that. I'm pretty sure I've said that in a tweet. But like, I mean, what happens to these kids is so unforgivable.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I heard about Munchausen was when I used to watch the Housewives of Beverly Hills, and one of Lisa Rinna, who is like a retired like soap opera
Huge
actress,
lips,
with the huge
lots of
lips.
filler.
I mean, maybe she's not retired. Maybe she still does. I don't know. But she accused Yolanda Hadid, the mother of the famous supermodels Gigi and Bella Hadid, of having Munchausen after her like diagnosis of Lyme's disease.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah,
I missed
and
that season.
it was a huge thing for multiple seasons, and
Huh.
obviously, they portrayed, Lisa Rinna as the villain and Yolanda as the victim, and yeah, she almost left the series. It was a huge deal. So that's the first time I heard about Munchausen.
Did she actually have Lyme disease? Is Lyme disease, I mean, it is a real thing that you get from
Well,
Yeah.
ticks, is it not?
Lyme disease, there is actual, I mean, it depends on who you ask. I mean, the GNM thing, but there, I'm from Pennsylvania where there are a lot of ticks, and I know a lot of people who got a tick bite and then got a bullseye rash, and then their joints got really swollen and they had fevers and they took big doses of antibiotics and they got better. So
Okay.
yeah, there is a tick-borne illness that we call Lyme disease that seems to respond to doxycycline and Cipro or things like that.
Is it
there's
permanent
a-
potentially? Does that
well,
a
then
thing
there's
that
this whole
happens?
chronic Lyme phenomenon that it can go undiagnosed in some people where they don't know that they've had it, but there is this new phenomenon of like Lyme literacy. This is a huge minefield, and it's almost like a war within medicine. Mainstream medicine does not recognize this chronic Lyme that is being diagnosed by a lot of alternative providers. So people who have kind of what I call apocalypsitis, they don't feel good. Their body hurts. They're tired all the time. They're depressed. They have all these weird physical symptoms that so many people have right now, end up getting nowhere in mainstream medicine. They go to these Lyme literate providers. They have their blood sent to special labs where it looks to me like close to 100% of them qualify for a Lyme diagnosis. And then they spend all their money on all these treatments from these Lyme literate providers. Sometimes they get an initial amazing response, but usually they don't feel better in the long run. You probably have a different take on it than I do, Isabella. But
I don't feel, no, not necessarily. I mean, I don't feel super strongly. I remember like the few years where I became obsessed with avoiding ticks, and it like wasn't always the case, and I like wonder why that is, and like just the up and up of, is it Lyme awareness? Is it certain drugs that all of a sudden were developed for Lyme? Like I just remember yeah, I like, and I was in Maine last summer, and I for the first time I had a tick on me, and I remember the response like that. Oh my God, if it touches me, I'm gonna get Lyme, like just that. Whereas the people I was with were just like, it's all good. We're just gonna take it off, and we get them all the time. Our kids get ticks on them all the time, and we are all, just like
yeah.
like
I've never had a tick on me.
Oh,
I've
they're
been
so
pretty scared of it, to be honest. I don't know if I've even ever seen a tick. I really don't want to see one.
ticks are so creepy and gross. But just growing up though in the woods in Pennsylvania, I mean, we would just pick the ticks off of us every evening. And just like you usually had a tick on you or more than one. I still and they can carry tick-borne illnesses. There's, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. There are other tick-borne illnesses. And I think that I'm enough of an allopathic medicine person that I believe that there's a test for that and that there's a treatment for that. But I think a lot of what gets called chronic Lyme is not, they're not showing up positive on those tests. And my question is, if there's some big medical conspiracy to suppress that, why would there be? The medical industry loves diagnosing people as chronically ill and selling them tons and tons of medications for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a customer for life is the ideal thing.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I think like I always thought Lisa Rinna was like nuts, but I think perhaps if we wanted to like think about what she was picking up on, and it may be she may have been responding to the whole identity that Yolanda created around having Lyme's disease, and like demanding specific responses to her having Lyme's disease. And that is
that's it.
Yeah.
My suffering is more important and more special than anybody else's suffering. No one suffers like I do. No one is special the way I am. No, my suffering deserves extra acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to be coddled. You need to treat me in a particular way because I have this disease and this suffering. Like, you can't treat me like you would other people. You can't treat me as you would before I had this disease or this diagnosis because I'm particularly fragile. Don't stress me out because you'll trigger my blah.
Yeah. And that, I feel like that's a gift of like I even thinking about that around, like, I feel like how prepared I was to not take things personally when bad things happened in my life, like my dad dying. I'm like, oh, not everyone says the same thing. Not everyone does the thing that you think they should. Not everyone calls in the certain primary or sends the right flowers, the right food. It's like, it's all good. Like, it's okay. And to demand and feel that sense of entitlement, not to say that you might not feel sad or have your feelings hurt or like want more from certain people, but that sense of entitlement that exists when you're going through something that's so dangerous and it's so unrealistic, and you're just set up for resentment and disappointment if you're
and that's what's sorry, I totally cut you off. Like that's what's happening in our whole culture, right? With the transgender thing, with all these identities. I mean, this is one of the things that annoyed me about the chronic fatigue thing, is because these women that I'm thinking of were using it as an excuse. Like, things had to be acceptable from them that weren't acceptable from others in terms of work and responsibilities and, like what they could manage. And it's like, okay, you're looking for, like, you can't be relied on, but then you also don't want people to, like, you can't, I'm using the wrong word here, but like you want to be treated with the same level of respect and trust, but at the same time, you're insisting that you're not trustworthy. Like, if you can't rely on somebody, that's a pretty big deal. Like, if you can't rely on somebody to show up or get the thing done that they need to get done, like, I'll help with this aspect of the work, and they drop the ball, and then everybody else is fucked. Like, or yeah, like you can't speak to me in a particular way. Like, you have to use different language around me. You have to use a different tone. I mean, that's almost verging on emotionally abusive as far as I'm concerned.
Totally. And it's being encouraged more and more from early childhood on. It's like, my kid is different and special and has to be coddled because they have this diagnosis and that diagnosis, and needs more time on the exam, and needs to be allowed to take amphetamines and other performance enhancing drugs, that you're less special child. It's illegal for them to take it, and they have to, your less special child has to finish the test within the time parameters. And it's like this culture of extra specialness,
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I just got distracted because I realized that my laptop wasn't charging and I don't want it to die, but I will let you know if that's about to happen. I don't know why this plug is working. It's like, eek. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, and I mean, all the trans identities and whatever, all these various mental illnesses that people are identifying with, it's all, so much of it is about coddling and attention, and I can't do this, and you have to treat me in this way, and you have to play pretend with me, and you can't treat me like you're treating other people. And we've all gone along with it so much, and look at what it's done to our culture. Like, I think the whole thing is toxic. And so I think that, I mean, yeah, I mean, people defending like, this is the reality, this is what I have. And, you know, so many people have made it their whole identities. Like, a lot of these people who were angry with me on Twitter had these identities listed in their Twitter profiles, and it was their whole like advocacy. They were now these like long COVID activists where they were educating the public about long COVID, and they were just sharing their story over and over and over. And all of the responses were like, oh, like, poor you, like, oh, you're so brave, thank you so much for what you're doing, da 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 da. Which is like, that should make a normal, healthy person feel gross. Like, if people fawn over me, it makes me feel, you know, and I don't mean like, of course it's nice like, thank you for this, or I like what you do, or da 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 da. But like, this over the top, like, fawning constantly and seeking that out is gross to me, and it should feel gross to a normal person. So I suppose if those people felt like insulted by me, or maybe that I didn't respect that, that would be true. But yeah. Do we have anything else to say about the Munchausen thing? I suspect that Isabella is probably getting tired. It's close to your bedtime.
3 hours past my bedtime.
Right.
We do have some questions that I wanted to get to, actually. So one of them, we'll get through these and then we'll log off. So Helen had asked, she says, because trans has infiltrated so many families, my question is, if trans wasn't a thing, do you think most of these trans-affirming mothers would be a Munchausen mom in a more traditional way? Would they have been red flag parents anyway? Or is it the perniciousness of trans ideology? Basically, was everyone always this crazy?
No, people were not always this crazy. I think this is a reaction to the suppression. Like, you know, I grew up, so I was born in 1969, and I think that I grew up with the whole why be normal, right? When there was this real reaction against the pressure to be an athletic jock with good grades. And there was so much pressure to be normal and not complain, and to do well in school and get a good job. And I used to think that we all should rebel against that. And now I think we actually should go back to that, where parents should really be proud when their kids are normal and healthy and functional, and normal in the sense of they are very much like other children. You know, it was kind of a shameful thing to have a kid who was a societal outlier, and that had its own problems. But no, we didn't have the same like bragging about your mentally ill child. You know, it was highly stigmatized not to be normal. And now with postmodernism and whatever the hell we want to say is happening to our culture, the opposite is true. No one wants to brag about how functional and healthy they are.
No, and you're seen as a jerk if you do.
Right.
You know, showing off, and you're judging everybody else and condescending to them and insulting them.
For some reason, this is being manufactured. Like, there's some reason, and you could get into Fourth Industrial Revolution and robots are going to do all the jobs, and they want as many people identifying as unable to work as possible. There probably is some truth to that, because
so then they're reliant on the government. Sorry,
totally, that absolutely. So they're relying on the government, and they feel entitled, and they'll police other people. We already see how good they are at policing other people who won't get in line with that program.
Well, and look at what happened when we stopped stigmatizing weirdos. Like, sorry, but like, it's like, I don't know. I feel sort of like validated in my snobbery, because like, we've been forced to accept weirdos, like these people who are obvious red flags, who are like sketchy, or, you know, parading their sexual fetishes around, like men who really should be stigmatized, and like that you should really not speak to, and that you really should keep out of your spaces, or even, women with personality disorders who you should be like,
Mhm.
that's a weird thing to say. Like, that's a weird way to behave. I should really not be nice with this person. Like, in terms, like, set a boundary, which
Right.
isn't a nice thing to do. I'm not talking about yelling at people or anything like that necessarily, but like, it's like you totally should be a snob. Like, I've always been a big fan of being a snob, and I'm being serious. Like, I don't mean that in like a money way or like a what are you wearing way. I mean, you should be picky about who you spend your time around, and you should be judgmental about the people around you, because look at where we've ended up with this include everybody except everybody don't judge bullshit.
Yeah.
We've ended up somewhere really toxic.
Yeah, for sure. Discernment. For sure, we need more discernment. And I don't think, to address the question too, it's like I don't know if there's something that could replace the trans thing, because the trans thing is so uniquely nefarious in its like collusion. Like, you've got the legal system, you've got the educational system, you've got culture, you've got media, you've got medicine, like, to support this uniquely fucked up thing. And I don't know that there is a stand-in. Like, if you use the example of like, would more mothers just want to like traffic? Would that be normalized? Like, would there just be more trafficking of children? And it's like, well, it could be true, like, if all the other things were in place. Like, if there was some drug to help them perform better. And I mean, this is getting so dark, but like, I think that the trans thing is it's so well done in its insanity and its orchestration.
Yeah, like, I don't know that there's ever been anything that this has been as widely accepted throughout culture. And not just accepted, but encouraged and celebrated in terms of like sickliness and weirdo-ness and mental illness. That's also such a destructive, harmful thing. I mean, I could compare the parents of so-called trans kids who are, making money off of it and giving them reality shows like Jazz and, putting them all over social media, to parents who put their kids into acting really young and push them to basically work as children in this really toxic, dangerous environment. But that was never such a big phenomenon. And I don't think that it was rooted in this victimhood, like, my poor child, and aren't they amazing, and they've overcome, and they're so brave, and aren't I brave also, and great for having, supported my child through this transing process. Saved them from suicide.
There definitely is a stage mom aspect to it, though. That's a good comparison. That just wasn't as widely available. And yeah, this is a lot more accessible.
Right. You can have the pageant right in your own, like on TikTok. Like, you don't need to audition.
Totally.
You don't need to be judged. You don't need to hire a makeup artist. You don't need to get the custom made tailored outfits. You can just
and everyone's a winner.
Spray paint their hair.
And you can make a lot of money off of it.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Should we log off? Do you guys feel like you have more that you want to talk about on this topic?
Oh, we always have more, but we should probably log off.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone so much for tuning in. I found this conversation really interesting. Thank you so much, Isabella and Mary Lou, as always. Again, down in the show notes if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not, the links to Isabella's work it's www.whosebodyisit.com, and Mary Lou Singleton is on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton, and enchantedfamilymedicine.com. You can find Isabella's hats. The other ones sound awesome too. I hope you go through all of them on the stream. I'm excited to see. Oh, you have them. Let's see. This is the blue. This is the most popular so far. Make faces move again. It's so great. I'm really impressed, Isabella. Nice. It's a really good slogan you came up with.
This is a stroke of genius in the late December.
Were you looking at someone's face in particular?
Oh, I literally, it was like it came to me in within 45 minutes. They were being shipped to my apartment.
Amazing. So those are also at whosebodyisit.com. And Don't Drink the Kool-Aid is on Teespring. That link is also down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, please, and thank you, so that YouTube can't limit us as much. I mean, I feel like sometimes I demonetize myself by swearing so much and saying bad things. So
I said vaccine only like 17 times. So.
I know I did it. I was like, whatever. And oh yeah, and we started a locals community. Some people had suggested that like a few episodes ago. I haven't really done too much with it, but it's there. If anybody wants to join any of the chats there, we can do chats after the streams over there, which would be fun. So that's linked below also. Where are all the women? If you join locals, you'll find it in there. But yeah, also the links down below. And someone has been asking about the puppy, so I'm just going to introduce. She's asleep over here, so I feel bad waking her up, but she's so cute. So just.
Oh, there's Emma.
Yeah, Emma's been sleeping behind me this whole time, which I was so touched by, because she usually is like avoiding me, but she's been nice. She's so grouchy. She's like the top snob of our household. She's like, no, of course I don't want you to touch me ever. Don't touch me. But then gets sad when I touch the puppy. Hey, Adelita. I've named her Adelita, which is what they called the Mexican female revolutionaries. Adelitas. Come here, Google. Let's see. Come here. Oh, she's so light in comparison to Emma. But I just look at her little tiny ears. She's so sweet. She's like the sweetest. And look at her perfect little ears. You can't see them. Sorry, you're so sleepy. Anyway, we love her very much. She's so sweet. Okay, you can go back to sleep. Now everyone's seeing the puppy. Everybody's sleeping. The doggies are napping. We had a big day today. We went for a long walk and we got a new collar.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, sorry, honey bunny. Okay. Now that we've done all of our housekeeping. Oh, sweetie. She's all sleepy and confused now. Okay. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next Wednesday at the same time. So yeah, have a good night. Have a great week. Great to see you as always, Mary Lou and Isabella.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, everybody.